I'm Cuong Do, and I lead the global strategy group for Samsung. And prior to Samsung, I had spent 17 years at McKinsey before becoming the chief strategy officer for Lenovo, Tyco Electronics, and then Merck. I retired from Merck to go and build Identifor for reasons that will come clear in a minute. And before my friends at Samsung finally arm-twisted me to join them. So first, today is all about what I do for my nights and weekends. Right? During the week, during the day, I help run a $400 billion group. But during nights and weekends, I help build this tiny little startup that has, over the course of the last few years, burnt a big hole through our retirement savings. Right? Before we start, though, I like to do two things. One is to thank Opus Research and the panel of judges for selecting Identifor for the award of how we've applied this to solve a real-world problem. And the second thing before I start, I like to show of hands. How many in this room has a family member that's affected by autism or knows someone who has a family member affected by autism? Right. Autism is actually the biggest childhood epidemic of our time. And if you recall nothing from the next 30 minutes, I hope you recall this. 50,000 to 1 million people. That's the number of autistic teenagers who will become adults over the course of the next decade. Right now, 70% of them are unemployed. They're living at home with mom and dad, relying on mom and dad for transportation, everything else, relying on Social Security and not contributing to society. And here at Identifor, we believe we can transform these lost lives to become productive lives. And dadgummit, we are going to do that because my son's life depends on this as well. My son was diagnosed when he was 2, and he's just turned 14. So for the last 12 years, my wife and I have been steeped in this whole world. We helped build Autism Speaks, build schools, different foundations to help train clinicians and parents and so forth. And through all of this, we unfortunately are aware of what's available and more importantly, what's not available to help these audience. And that's why we built Identifor to go and help solve what we thought was the biggest missing link, which is how do you help teenagers become adults and make them productive in life? So for us, our priorities are threefold. The first one is to help identify abilities and strengths and interests of these individuals. Right, the reason this is important, right, is that often we see people leave high school with parents and educators not really knowing what they're good at and what they're interested in doing. Right? Schools look at math and science and language arts grades, which may have nothing to do with what these individuals are good at. But we also know stories of how parents, some parents, a minority of parents, stumbled upon something that their child is really good at. And once you have that little insight onto what a person is good at or is interested in doing, you now have a direction that you can start to explore so that you can put in place educational and vocational plans. What we want to do is to systematically uncover these abilities and strengths, and we want to make that stumbling effect available to everybody, not just a tiny minority of the population out there. The second thing we want to do, that is being delivered to using what we call the Identifor platform. I'll tell you a little bit in a minute. The second thing that we want to do is to help get everybody a job, right? Because eventually they have to go on and be productive members of society. The last thing is to support them throughout the day. When they're going to college, when they're working, we believe the need for support is actually higher than what it is when they were in high school. Because mom, dad, aides are no longer around, but the need for help is still there. So how do we prepare and provide that help? We created something called Companion, and that's what I would like to show you today. That's where the bulk of our time. So first, on the Identifor platform, there are multiple ways you can access the Identifor platform. You can go to our website at identifor.com. You can download our app from the Android, the iOS app store. Since we're tiny, starting up, you need to search for Identifor, and then you'll find it. What it does, what makes it unique, is that there are dozens of games that collect data behind the scenes, right? We try to collect data and provide insights into what's called multiple intelligences, right? The work by Howard Gardner out of Harvard, he doesn't believe that there is a single IQ score. He believes there are 8 innate human abilities: visual abilities, logical thinking, right? Music skills. By using these games, we're able to assess and identify a profile for a person in a way that pen and paper tests in schools can never do. And at this point, we can do it for 5 of the 8 intelligences. We also look at things such as, it's known as executive function, right? So these are cognitive abilities, cognitive processes that allow a person to take in information, process it, act upon it. So it's things like memory, parallel processing. Can you start and stop actions at the appropriate time? And the third thing that we do is we look at career interest. We all remember taking those surveys in high school. Do you like to do this? How much do you like to do that? Eventually it tells you to be a mortician, right? That obviously would not work very well for an autistic community, but we figured out a way to make that same approach to create the same profile, right? So what makes us unique is that unlike other systems, right, we essentially build it in a way that people want to interact. We use games because I know kids and adults will play games all the time. We also use Abby, an artificial intelligence-driven human avatar, to have back and forth conversation with the person. You can ask Abby to do things for you. She'll ask you questions. You can interact. So if there's one thing I've learned over 12 years working with autistic kids, it has to be a social interaction, right? So I think Dave and Lauren from the first panel were absolutely spot on. It has to do with the social interaction, but it goes much beyond whether it's a text or a phone call. It actually has to be a human interaction if you want people to go and do the things that they don't want to do, right? Which is often what you need to do with an autistic community, or frankly, things that you need to do with an older population with healthcare, helping all of us to take our medications on time and so forth. The second thing that makes it unique is that it allows each individual to be tailored and participate at the individual level. So you play these games. Behind the scenes, the data analytics and everything kicks in, and it provides a parent with what we call a dashboard. So this is the dashboard for my son. All right, on the left side, it gives a sense of his executive function. So how is he doing on things such as engaging, seeking solution, optimizing how he spends his time, optimizing his decisions. On the right circle is his multiple intelligence, right? As you can see, the size of the pie wedge gives you his relative strength. The bigger the pie, of course, the bigger the strength. His strength is music. His weakness is linguistics. Shows up appropriately. And then at the bottom, that's how he likes to spend his time, his RIASEC profile. And based on that profile, we then display the kinds of jobs that other people have enjoyed who has that kind of a profile. We then allow you to dig deeper into each one of those jobs to say, well, what do you do? How do you spend your time? What are the tools that you use in that job? How do you spend your time doing that job? Right? So it allows career and job exploration. Importantly, it allows you to take deep dives. The first thing is that it compares you to everybody else in our data set. Right? So my son, you can see his strength is music. That's why he sets the bar. He's 100% for all the people who have played the game on music abilities, whether it's music recall, whether it's perfect pitch, perfect rhythm, and so forth. He's 23% on his linguistic skills. But the other thing is that we give historic data. We track data for as long as possible. Right? So for Benjamin, because he's been a guinea pig from day one, we have 1.5 years of data on him. Right? So you get data as soon as your child has played enough of the games. The other things that makes us unique is it's objective and quantifiable. It really comes down to multiple intelligence, executive functions, and the Holland work. It provides parents, educators a tool, a common language to have a conversation. It's based on real data that actually updates over time, so it allows you to monitor what's going on. It has an artificial intelligence human avatar that drives the engagement. It uses natural language processing, which I'll talk a little bit more, and has an unsurpassed team. Frankly, I just begged, borrowed, and stole a team that was actually fabulous. The work of this could not have been made possible without the team from True Image Interactive, which is really a fabulous foundation and platform that we built all of this on. So that's really what we're trying to do with the Identifor platform, right? In supporting people throughout the day, what we then needed to do was actually how do we make these individuals productive? We then spent the last year working with over a dozen organizations around the country who support adults, right? So whether it's in a housing situation, in schools, in job situations. We had a bunch of graduate student interns, frankly. This entire company has been built by interns. Right, so we had a bunch of interns work around the country to identify what are the barriers and challenges that adults face throughout the day. Right? So we learned about things such as just reminding them it's 11:30, time to go to bed, or it's time to take your medication, or it's Sunday, time to do laundry, that kind of stuff. So very basic needs that we may take for granted, but remember, these are young adults with a developmental delay that just needs this kind of coaxing and so forth. So that's why we built Companion. Companion is a 24/7 companion for teens and adults that live on your smartphone. You have real conversations with her. She gets to know you over time, right, through the machine learning algorithms that we're implementing and so forth. She knows that you leave your home normally by 7 o'clock in the morning, but if today at 7:15 you're still home, she'll ping you to see what's going on. Are you late or is something else going on? She can answer your questions. She can be an aid for very basic needs, right? And therefore, Abby becomes that personalized aid for you when mom, dad, aides, other people are no longer around to help. So instead of just talking about Abby, let me just show her to you. Could we switch over? So this is Abby. She's essentially delivered into an app. This is the home screen. Basically, it gives you the next few things you have to do on your calendar. It gives you weather. Weather is important for a reason I'll come back to in a minute. Right? But does anyone here know what's the number one reason an adult autistic person on the job gets fired? They don't go on breaks or come back on breaks on time, right? They just kind of go on, loses themselves in their own world, don't keep track of time, and therefore becomes a real problem when you don't come back to work on time. Abby, do I have to take my break when I'm told? I should have mentioned that we're a few weeks behind schedule. This was supposed to be production today, right? But we're now going through integration and integration testing. So not everything is fully working and it's not optimized yet. So let me try one more time. Abby, do I have to take my break when I'm told? Yeah, that's just the problem with live demos, right? So she will answer those kinds of questions, right? But then in addition to answering those questions, she will take you to the different modules in the app that we created, one of which just has to do with routines. We know that work, school, social, and different kinds of alerts are critical, right? So here in this particular case, this is for a student who's going to school at PACE. PACE is actually having all of their students with special needs use this app, this term, right? And so this student basically is working in a library from, this is Eastern time too, by the way, so it's 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock on Mondays, and they take a break at 4:30 to 4:15. So the system basically prompts them to go on break and reminds them to come back on break so that they don't get fired, address this major problem, right? And since we also mentioned that this is to help schools, this particular student is taking these courses, biology, world literature, and so forth. So the app helps you manage everything that you have over the course of the term, right? So when are your exams? When do you have labs? And as exams are coming up, Abby will then start to prompt you and ask you questions. What do you need to do to study and start to prepare for exams, right? Alarms, getting up in time, right? So we set for the student a morning alarm. Abby will call. Weekday bedtime alarm. Again, Abby will alert you. It's time to go to bed. Do laundry on Sunday afternoons, and then you have a Sunday brunch right, with family. All of this gets put onto your calendar. Your calendar manages everything, right? Because this is about helping a person stay on track. So not only about the schools and so forth, you have home chores, it tracks your medication, your social, your work, and so forth. So this morning, you had to take aspirin. Did you take it? Take your Lipitor, it was taken. Your different classes, right, and so forth, of what needs to be done. So that's essentially what we built her to do, is to make your life seamless. Abby, how much should I tip a good server? One more time. Abby, how much should I tip for good service? All right. So,
we all know that this never works.
That's right. So when it's working, it's actually you're having real back and forth conversation with her. She will give you an answer, but then she will also take you to different things that we built. We all have been in the situation. You're out at a meal with a few friends, right? The bill comes. The bill is for, let's say, $69.27. You then want to add, let's say, an 18%, well, let's say 20% tip to it because this was excellent service. We need to split the bill 3 ways, right? And so your portion of the bill is $27.71. Put down 3 singles, a 5 and a 20, and get 29 cents in tip in change back, right? Or it can work in different currencies, and so forth, right? And then let me go back to the calendar. Today, I have lunch with Brian, right? Brian, so any event that goes on your calendar, these are context sensitive, right? So if it's a meeting, and if you put in place the location, you can basically just get directions to it. You can call the person to make any arrangement, text the person to make any arrangement, or more importantly, Abby can do all of this for you, right? You can ask Abby, can you schedule a lunch for me at noon tomorrow? Abby would go into your calendar, schedule a lunch. She'll ask you, who do you want to have the lunch with, right? And if it's in your contacts, she'll add that to the invite, right? And all of this stuff will essentially gets automated. Oop. There's my reminder, right? And since I'm still on stage, I need to basically call or text Brian to say I'm late. That's my reminder call that Abby is calling me to remind me of the lunch, right? So, and here, because she knows where the restaurant is, it's in the item, she can get me an Uber. Right? A car will be here in 4 minutes, or it seems to be pretty close, so she'll give me walking directions, public transit directions, for example, on how to get there. Right? So this is all intended to help a person throughout the day address the various needs that you and I take for granted because we have assistants, we have other things going for us. But if you're a young adult with a developmental disability, this is a lifesaver, right? And this is the reason why Autism Speaks, Autism Society of America, a bunch of other organizations are really behind us, and hopefully we will have this thing ready in about a month to go into to the store, and guess what? It is free, right? It is completely free. All right, can I go back to the slide? So this was not have been made possible without the team from TII. When I was at Merck, I was responsible for a $500 million virtual VC fund that invested in new areas for Merck, right? So this is the reason why Merck is actually one of the world's largest investors in healthcare IT. Right? And I was looking for certain things to help scale up some of the businesses that we had. I had a business in the UK, for example, where we had nurses call out to patients to help remind them to take their medication for diabetes or their insulin and so forth to keep them tightly controlled, all of which was not scalable. Right? So we were looking for solutions for it to be scaled. I was looking for a solution to figure out what to do for autistic teenagers. Right? And so when I was introduced to the guys at TII after 3 years of searching, what I found was the world's really first human avatar, right, when it really works, which then allows to create this real human interaction, the real social interaction. Right? The advanced natural language processing can not only conversational, but it can determine intent. Right? I can ask Abby, how do I make a tacos? Right? And Abby will bring up a recipe, email me the ingredients, put it on my shopping list, which is a different intent than if I ask her, what are tacos? Right? She'll then go to Wikipedia, bring it up, and so forth. Right? And most importantly, it's conversational. Right? So if you're interested in learning more about what TII's platform can do, it's revolutionized what we can do. We wouldn't be here without this. Right? The guys will be out. Brian and Ed are over here. They'll be out in the hallway afterwards. So in summary, what we're trying to do here at Identifor is we try to help individuals identify their abilities and interests, right? And we basically try to support them over the course of a day. We're bringing it to mobile devices, and frankly, we're only limited by our own imagination of what we can train Abby to do, right? And where we stand right now, since I do have a day job running a fairly big company, I'm in the stage now that product development is largely finished. I didn't want to go raise funding or build a team and so forth until the product was pretty much done. The product the first V1 will be done in about a month, so we're starting the process of raising some fund. I need to go and hire a CEO, a CM, a chief marketing officer. So if any ideas and so forth, please come and see me. Right? So thank you very much.
Thanks, Cuong. I think we have some time. We're always appreciative when people try and do live demos, so we know how stressful and it can be. So, and I've seen it work. So I definitely saw it on the web and on an app. Yep. So it's a very engaging experience. It definitely is something that I found to be impressive. So, as did our team on the awards show. Questions here? Because I just have one question before I get to that. Oh, in the back here.
Not sure if I'm allowed to ask questions now since I'm with the press, but I was playing with Abby before a couple days ago, and she emphasized something that you were talking about today as well, that it will always be completely free. Why?
Sure. When we started this, we started with a focus on autistic kids because selfishly, it's about my son and the whole community that I've been working in for a decade. And literally every parent that we spoke to along the way, or every person that we try to show this thing to, says, please don't limit it to just the autistic kids, because my children can benefit from it. I can benefit from using this app, and I'm willing to pay for it. Right? And because I was in a big hurry to get this thing rolling, I did not want to spend a lot of time right up front raising funds and doing all of this stuff. So we have funded everything from savings so far. We've set up a for-profit C Corp and a companion nonprofit, right? And for those parents that are willing to pay for this, I'll take your $95 subscription fee, annual subscription fee, any day. Thank you very much, right? And what we'll do is we'll use that subscription fee, we'll put it through the nonprofit, and we'll make sure that anybody who has a special need or anybody who has a need will get it for free, because we want to help as many people as we can.
Great. Thanks. Well, good. I know you got to get to Palomino. It was okay if we join you in about 10 minutes? So the one question I have, actually, and I'll bring up Brian after this, who is going to do the drawing for the GoPro, so hopefully one of you are in here. When we were actually looking at Identifor for the Intelligent Assistance Awards, somebody, not going to say, mentioned the idea of they must have taken so much video footage to get that particular, engaging experience. But say a little more about, why such an important human avatar, why particularly for this application when it comes to autistic, kids and adults, but yeah, sure. A little more about the avatar itself.
I spent 20 years working in healthcare, trying to get people to do things that they don't want to do, such as take your medication. We all know that if you need to stay on your blood pressure medication, your Lipitor and so forth, so that you do feel well, right? But adherence is actually terrible, even though we know we want to do it. Everybody knows that I could lose 10 pounds, right? But yet I don't adhere to what I want to do. And through all the research over 2 decades, what became very clear is the only way to get people to do the things that they don't want to do is, first, it has to be individualized to them. You have to tailor it to their motivations, the way they like to interact. And the second is that it has to be social. Right? And social, not in the sense of a text or an app, and it's not even in a text messages or phone. It has to be with a real human being that they over time can relate to. It's not about a cartoon. It is not even really good cartoons gets you to that uncanny valley that frankly just creeps out a lot of people. Right? So that's why we basically said it had to be a real human being, and the TII guys were the first one that were able to get us to where we want to do. And they're doing some pretty phenomenal research right now to take us to the next stage.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.